Okay,
She's
so
honest, right?
Miss Chrissy is here. She's going to be here talking to you. And she is a pharmacist, and so please give her your attention.
Good morning, everyone. Does everybody know what a pharmacist does? Ish, kind of?
Medication.
Yeah, exactly. We dispense medications. You got it. My topic today is professionalism because pharmacists, I don't know if you know this or not, but have to go to a lot of years of college, have a license, pass a big old exam to be able to actually do what we do. And a lot of that is your professionalism. I mean, you can't show up to work in communal shirts or pants and people take you seriously. So there's a lot that goes into that. You gotta earn respect, you gotta earn trust so that people understand that you are actually there for them, you are helping them. You are not just there to check the box, get a paycheck, and leave. It's a big job. I work for the VA hospital in Dayton. Do any of you have veterans in your family? Yeah, so we offer care free of charge there to veterans in the community. It is an awesome place to work. That's just one example of where pharmacists can work. You guys are probably more familiar where pharmacists work at CVS, Kroger, Walgreens, Rite Aid, Hawks, and Tip City and things of that nature, but there's pharmacist types of positions in so many other areas, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But yes, go ahead and skip to the next slide. So we're gonna talk about why is professionalism important. We're going to talk about what the heck is it. We're gonna go through Ms. Potter's questions and answers that you guys are supposed to research about different professions each week. And then we're gonna talk about what you can do next. Go ahead and skip to the next slide. So here are, it's very hard to see, so I'm going to explain them. A couple of images of pharmacists that are very popular on the internet. So we've got, on the left-hand side, her name is Katie. Now, I don't know if you know this either, if you've done any of your research ahead of time, but the profession of pharmacy requires a doctorate degree. So you're in school long enough to receive a doctorate to be able to become a pharmacist. So she is Dr. Katie Forbes. She has a gazillion tattoos on her. She's very different than the normal type of pharmacist you would see behind the counter at like CVS. She's wearing a Spider-Man hat in the photo. She wears bracelets, she wears all kinds of rings. She's very unconventional, but she still acts like a professional. So she may not look the part, but she still acts the part. In the middle here, this is a comedian. He's a pharmacist. His name is Shane, and he literally has a pair of high heels on. So he and his wife are both pharmacists. So he's got his white coat on, and he literally has a pair of high heels. He's very, very short dude. And so he makes fun of his stature a little bit. But again, he's still a doctor of pharmacy, and he still can act with professionalism, even though he doesn't look at it right there. And then this last one on the right-hand side are a pair of pharmacists who are trying to advertise for a pharmacy union for pharmacists and pharmacy technicians. Most are not unionized, and some of the working conditions for pharmacy across the nation could be improved. And so they're advocating for that. They went to New York. They literally got blazers made of CVS receipts. They both work at CVS. You know how you go to CVS and you get a receipt that's like 10 miles long. It's a running joke at CVS. So they got blazers made of the long receipts that you would get at CVS to wear. Again, not your typical, what you would look like if you were a pharmacist. Like if you passed these folks on the street, you would have no idea they were actually a healthcare professional, but they are. So it's not necessarily just about how you look, but how you act. Go ahead and skip to the next slide. These are examples of probably what you would expect when you walk up to the counter at the pharmacy and see a pharmacist. So there's the typical look, and then there's the non-typical look. But professionalism isn't always about how you look. Go ahead and skip to the next slide. Tips, what is it? Responsibility, integrity, what's that last one?
Respect, responsibility.
Okay. So a lot of what you guys are taught here every day at TIP are prime examples of what's required to be professional and have professionalism. That respect, responsibility, with responsibility, you honor your commitments, you have a good attitude. Does anybody know what integrity actually means? Yeah.
Do do what's right even when nobody's watching.
Exactly. So in pharmacy, a lot of times, even after you get out of school, you could do a pharmacy residency. We have pharmacy residents who work at the VA, and when we're interviewing them, we ask them to give an example of how they have shown to have integrity. So it's usually a hard question for people to answer because nobody wants to admit, talk about themselves, what they've done in a good way when nobody is watching. Like, oh, my friend wanted to steal my test answers, but I knew that wasn't the right thing to do, so I didn't let them, or, what have you. Any kind of example like that. But we ask those questions. We put people in those uncomfortable situations because we are looking for those that are the most professional for those roles. So anyway, I'm glad you had the answer. Good job. Because a lot of times people will say, oh, I was working at I was a technician at CVS, and somebody came up to me and said, oh, I don't really trust your answer on this. Can I speak to the pharmacist? That's not integrity. That's somebody just, judging that you don't know what you know and they want to speak to somebody else. That's not integrity. So you have to know the answer to that before you even answer the question. And then accountability, just being on time, doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. Excellence, I think that was mentioned already. And it absolutely applies to everyone in any job. Who's got a job right now? A couple of you have jobs. That's okay. It doesn't have to be full-time. Obviously, your full-time job is being a student. But even at McDonald's, or if you become a plumber one day, or an HVAC technician, you gotta show up and be professional when you're doing your job. It's not only applied to pharmacy, it's everywhere. It's no matter what you're doing. If you're a babysitter and you show up to babysit someone's kids, do you wanna act a fool? Absolutely not. You wanna act with professionalism, so they invite you back and they pay you better. Things like that. Maybe you get promotions in the places that you work, and you act with professionalism. Okay, next slide. Going through Ms. Potter's questions and answers for the job of a pharmacist in general, did you guys already research this or not? Do you guys know that?
They get to pick their own career.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, so that's good. Then I will go through these for a pharmacist. So my job title officially, I'm a pharmacy manager, so I'm actually a pharmacist executive. But pharmacists, as we've already covered, dispense medications. That's what we do most of the time. Other examples of pharmacists that work in different areas are pharmacists that actually work for waste management. So when you throw medications into the trash and they end up in the landfill, if you think about if everybody in Tip City was throwing medications away in their trash can, and then the waste management folks came and picked those up and threw them in the landfill, eventually they're going to dissolve, they're going to leach out into the soil, maybe get into our water, things of that nature. So even things like throwing away your medications are important for a pharmacist to be a part of. How should we do that appropriately? Typically what they say, I have no idea if you guys know this or not, but I will share, take a container, put some coffee grounds in it and a little bit of water, and then throw your medications in it. That actually disintegrates them and inactivates them. Then you can throw that in the trash and it's not a big deal. Not worried about getting into the water stream or anything like that. But a pharmacist had to be hired into that role, do that research, and figure out what the best way was to dispose of medication. So they even work for waste companies, trash companies. You'd never think you'd see a pharmacist there, but you do. Poison control. If anybody ever, your kid gets into some kind of, chemical or medication and they down the whole bottle and the parent's freaking out, they call poison control. They're talking to a pharmacist a lot of times, figuring out what's the best thing to do. Do I rush them to the hospital or is it gonna be okay? That kind of a thing. Pharmacists work in research. Obviously, new medications come out just about every other day. How do we even know what these things do and how are they fixing our sicknesses or our ailments or the things that are wrong with us? Well, it takes a lot of research. So pharmacists work in research, pharmacists work in hospitals, pharmacists work in the community, all kinds of places. The annual salary for a pharmacist is pretty good. Typically, it starts at $100,000 and it can go anywhere up to $300,000 per year, depending on how much responsibility a pharmacist has. So it's pretty good. I mentioned earlier, though, you have to go to school for many years to do that, so it pays off. You put a lot of work in, but then you get a pretty good salary in the end, so it's worth it. Plus, if you have college loans, then you'll be able to pay them back with that salary too. Skills needed to be a pharmacist. Lots of math and science knowledge, because you have to know how medications interact. You have to know how medications are dosed. Different body types, heights, weights, and things like that all affect how much medication someone is supposed to take. So you have to do the math, you have to know the science behind it. If you're working in a retail pharmacy, you have to be personable. You have to be able to talk to people, answer their questions. You have to understand different types of language. Sometimes you have to be bilingual. It just depends what kind of community or folks you're working with. Education requirements and prior experience. So in college, you do a lot of rotations where you're actually getting experience on the job. So that way, once you graduate and you get your license to practice pharmacy, then you're ready. You've got the experience required. But before that, you don't get anything ahead of time. Education requirements. Some colleges require 8 years to get that doctorate. Others, you can be done as early as 6. It just depends. In Ohio, there are, I think, 7 different colleges of pharmacy. There's quite a bit. I went to the one that you'd be done in 6. I didn't want to go 8. And like I said, too, even after you're done with college and you get your degree, if you want to do a residency to specialize, you could specialize in pharmacy oncology, pharmacy pediatrics, women's health, anticoagulation. There's all kinds of areas where you could specialize. In some places, they actually have pharmacists working side by side with doctors. They do that at the VA. It's kind of unique. And so sometimes pharmacists can actually manage patients too and change different prescriptions and dosages and things like that. It's kind of like a mid-level practitioner. I know you guys are probably more familiar with a nurse practitioner. Sometimes if your doctor's not available, but you could see a nurse if you're sick or you got a cold and they can prescribe things for you. It's very similar. There are pharmacist practitioners as well that if you've been on a medication a long time, but it needs tweaked a little bit, they can adjust your dose. So that's the kind of role that those folks play. Is this career currently in demand? I would say yes. And most of the reason why behind that is because during COVID was a really tough time for a lot of folks. And I know you all remember that. And it was a tough time for you guys too. But when you worked in the profession of healthcare during COVID, you were just as freaked out as anyone else, but yet those COVID patients needed your help. We had to go into work. We couldn't say, we're just gonna do this virtually. Somebody still needed to go in and fill the prescriptions and things of that nature. That was tough on a lot of people. And so their families were seeing them, come home and just it takes a toll on them, and they were thinking, I'm not gonna go into healthcare. So enrollment in those medical professions, just like pharmacy, are down right now. And so they're in high demand because not many folks want to really work in healthcare anymore as a result of that. And there's also a small pocket of people that thought, oh my gosh, that was so exciting. Like, I would actually want to be right there on the front lines doing those things. So yeah, I will do that. But not many, not enough to make up that difference. So right now there is a shortage. And so yes, it is in high demand. And I think it'll be that way for a little while until it normalizes back out again. Is it available locally, or do you have to relocate? Pharmacists are everywhere. I mean, we've already talked about it. You can find a pharmacist at just about every retail grocery store chain across the nation. So no, you likely would not have to relocate if you got a job as a pharmacist. Now, unless you wanted something specific. Like I mentioned, I work for the Veterans Hospital in Dayton, so it's a government job, which is very cool because government benefits are fantastic. Those aren't on every street corner, and those aren't available in every town. So I assist some of the veterans hospitals in Michigan and Indiana, and as well as Ohio. There's only 11. So if you really wanted a government pharmacist job and you wanted that specific area, okay, yeah, then you might need to relocate. Or as I mentioned before, if you want to specialize in oncology pharmacy or pediatric pharmacy, then again, you may have to relocate. But a general pharmacist, absolutely not. There's a gazillion in our community. There's a couple that live in my neighborhood. I was really surprised. I didn't know that at first, but over time you get to know, you guys probably actually, does anybody know a pharmacist? Besides me, you can't count me. No? Do you guys know Julie Dennison?
Oh, yeah.
Her mom's a pharmacist too. So yeah, I mean, they do, they work, they live in our communities, they're in our neighborhoods. You don't normally think about it that way, because it's not like you walk up to them and say, hey, how are you? What do you do for a living? You know, you don't necessarily understand that or absorb that all the time, but they're everywhere. Next slide. So how can you work on your professionalism? I would say professionalism is also kind of like a brand. So when you think of a brand, when you think of Starbucks, when you think of Nike, Under Armour, or anything else for that matter, Tip City is a brand. When you think of that, each brand in your mind has a reputation. What kind of brands do you guys like? When you think something positive. Give me an example.
A what?
A brand.
A brand?
Yeah, of something that you guys think positively. When you think about it, you think this is a good thing, this is a good brand, this is a good product. Not that one.
The one mom.
Like I said, Starbucks was an example. Do you guys like
Oh.
Starbucks? Nike, you like
Chick-fil-A.
Nike. Chick-fil-A. Okay, I'm a
Same
Cane's
club.
girl. Does anybody like Cane's better than
Yes.
Chick-fil-A? Okay. So like that's a great example. Yeah, everybody's got preferences. Everybody has their own opinions about the